This Voice of San Diego podcast is sponsored in part by Competitive Edge Research. As a nonprofit news organization, Voice of San Diego depends on our members, foundations, and sponsors like Competitive Edge Research. We are very grateful for all of our supporters, and we will recognize their support during the show. Competitive Edge Research, San Diego's premier public opinion research firm, sponsors this podcast because they like good journalism as much as they like good polling. Since 1987, Competitive Edge has helped clients see the why buried deep within the numbers. Competitive Edge designs comprehensive research studies, collects bulletproof data, and employs robust analytics so you'll understand why things are the way they are. Competitive Edge. Know what to do. And if you like Voice of San Diego's work and want to become a sponsor, contact us at development@voiceofsandiego.org.
Welcome to those of you listening on News Radio 600 Kogo. My name is Scott Lewis. I'm here with my friend Andrew Keatts.
What's up, my man?
What's up?
Not a lot. Just happy to be here. Happy to be back in the saddle. Nothing else feels right.
Sarah Libby is not here. She is on vacation. She texted me earlier. She said, "Boy, vacations with babies aren't relaxing." I said, "Yeah, sorry, man. Unfortunately, relaxing is over. There's nothing happens that is relaxing ever again."
Yeah, even when you get a minute, like when Callum takes a nap,
yeah,
I don't actually get any relaxation because I spend the entire hour and a half thinking about what I need to be doing to make use of that time before he wakes up, or just dreading that soon he'll be awake and my relaxation time will be over.
You still love him.
Of course.
You're excited to see him wake back up, but
it's laying down is so nice, and I just lay down, and then I'm like, oh, I'll have to get up in 40 minutes.
Yeah. It gets a little better. I was on...
There's a lot that could kill him right now.
Yeah, and there's fewer things over time.
Yeah, right now, it's any amount of time that I don't spend staring at him could lead to his imminent death, and it's crazy.
I was trying to say it gets better, but then, I was on the plane with my kid.
Yeah.
We were going on to go see my grandma, and my mom shuffles Ruby over to me and says she needs to go to the bathroom. And then Ruby looks at me and just barfs all over me on the plane. And the lady next to me was not happy about that at all.
Did it get on her?
No, just
the being of there.
Yeah, because we still had a good hour left in the flight, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a change of clothes handy. So things do get better, but that sort of stuff still happens. And the flight attendants were really nice. I think they don't clean those planes. I think they just kind of rub it in with their foot.
That sounds right.
No, I kid Southwest. They take care of things. All right, we've got a great show. It's raining today.
So,
are you okay?
Yeah.
KPBS had this tweet said expect to see up to 7/10 of an inch of rain. What 7/10?
Could we get more specific about that?
I couldn't even picture that in my head. What does that mean? 7/10. Hopefully, hang in there. We can do this. Also, we have a special podcast episode. I interviewed Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher and her husband, a guy named County Supervisor-elect Nathan Fletcher. They swear neither of them is running for mayor. I talked to them about the Democratic Party. I asked Lorena why she didn't join her fellow Democrats in trying to oust Assemblyman Brian Mainshine, who at this time of recording is holding on to an 864 vote lead against his opponent, Sunday Governor. And it's tight.
It's a tight one.
That went from him being at 54 to...
Time to pour one out for all the campaign consultants working on those races who, you work around the clock leading up to election day. Because it's once the votes are counted, we're done. They've still been working day and night for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of guys that go to the registrar.
They do.
And they watch every vote get checked and stuff. So, they have to look and see what's happening now, by the way, folks, is there's all these mail ballots and other provisional ballots. Now, a provisional ballot is where you go and vote. You might be registered at a different precinct, or you might have been registered as vote by mail, but you go in to do it in person. And so they have to make sure you didn't vote in some other way. So they have to check your signature and other things. So it takes a while. That's what they're going through and doing. But it's causing a lot of consternation around the state. Even the House Speaker for, I guess, a couple of days, Paul Ryan, said, "What's up with California taking so long?" So that's what's happening. That's what's being taken care of. We'll see if his lead continues. I thought the conversation with Lorena and Nathan was pretty good. They were in here together, so we talked a little bit about their personal lives. And, one question I wanted to ask them was about education. There seems to be a growing push to put a moratorium on new charter schools. This comes amid the news a couple of weeks ago that Thrive Public Schools, the new growing chain in San Diego, was just denied its renewal from the San Diego Unified School District. That was a big deal in local education discussions. And that comes, again, amid this push to put a moratorium on charter schools, as though they're draining resources from traditional schools. And so I wanted to ask them, Lorena and Nathan, about this, because between them, they have 3 kids in high-tech, high charter schools. And, they are also 2 of the most powerful people in Democratic politics. And so when I asked them about this, you'll want to hear Nathan's response to it. But here was Lorena Gonzalez. She said she did agree with the idea that there should be a moratorium on charter schools. And she said this.
My frustration with charter schools have been this idea that they have to be anti-union. And they don't. You have charter schools up and down the state that are functioning under union contracts. Like Nathan, we really believe in this kind of experimental learning, because not one size doesn't fit all. And I say that at the same time as I pass a bunch of bills and vote for a bunch of bills that are one size fits all. And so it's kind of this conflict, because you want some basics covered, but you also want things to continue to change and different approaches used and different types. I mean, if I explain to you my son's last semester last year, where he spent most of the time literally at the Colorado River and the Salton Sea and studying in every aspect water in 9th grade. I mean, it was amazing.
So I probably should have followed up, like, is there, something about the structure, though, that allows that sort of experimentation and different style learning and, maybe not being part of the union system that allows that to be the case? But that's the interesting strain I think a lot of people on the left have is there seems to be a push against the charter school, but they also like it in some cases.
I mean, we've covered Preuss is a successful charter school that is unionized. So right. To her point that there's nothing that is by definition impossible to work between charter schools and teachers unions. Seems to be a pretty prominent local example. Right.
So we'll see how that, if that becomes a major cleave in the Democratic Party or is not a big deal at all. All right. Another thing. I think it's going to be a big deal.
Way to set the stakes. This is either something or it's nothing.
Sometimes things are things in my head and then they don't turn out to be.
Yeah.
You've pointed those out sometimes.
I revel in it.
All right, another thing to pay attention to, we are going to have Maya Srikrishnan come in and talk about what's happening at the border. She was there Sunday when the melee and the border, tension really peaked. The border was closed, so we were waiting for her and Adriana Heldis, our producer of this great show, to come across the border and tell us everything was okay. And so she's got a lot to talk about the forces and what's going on in Tijuana. What's the deal with Asylum and why this happened, what's going to happen now. So stay tuned for that. So it's tense times around here. Everybody, I keep going on Kogo and they ask me, what's the big deal or what would happen if the border was closed forever? And I literally can't put into words how disruptive and bad that would be. I keep getting tongue-tied.
Well, it's just hard to conceptualize. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean it's like trying to separate conjoined twins that share like brains and lungs and their whole bodies. How do you couldn't separate that without it being just a horrible, deadly mess.
I mean, there are borders all over the cut of the world that have meaningful and real restrictions on how you can pass through, but you're allowed to pass them.
Yeah.
Why would we want to close the border? I don't even understand the hypothetical.
Well, there's a guy, the president.
But even he, like, I mean, I know that guy.
You've heard of him?
He's something. He's something. But like, he says all the time, if you don't have borders, you don't have a country. But that doesn't mean there shouldn't be ports along the border.
Well, yeah, he used to talk about a big door,
right?
Big nice door,
right? Like, why would we still haven't reached the far end of this spectrum now? Like, not only is there a wall, but there can't even be doors in it. I don't understand. It's a hypothetical I don't get.
All right, so we did have some feedback about our San Diego special discussion last week.
We did. There's a lot of people liked that discussion.
Yeah, so I think we ended up at the definition of basically there is a problem everyone agrees needs to be solved. There seems to be enough political support around
There's a consensus
solving.
solution.
There's a consensus solution, and yet it can't get done.
Right.
And that's a San Diego special.
Yeah.
There was a listener, Bob, texted and said, no. It's only about money. We just are too cheap around here. We don't raise taxes.
Yeah. It was an I mean, I was thinking about it, but I guess the thing seems too narrow to me.
It seems like an ingredient to some things.
Sure.
Obviously, it's an ingredient. But I would argue, like with the convention center, they've had this broad consensus to raise the hotel taxes. This is the first time they've actually asked people to do it, though, to send it to a vote.
That's true.
So you can't really say that people have rejected it when it's literally
taking fake votes.
They did a few fake votes. Any other
some clever fake votes?
Yeah, exactly. It was
some hotel owners that received
more
votes based on the amount of ownership they had.
Yeah.
It's an interesting
self-assessment, and it wasn't a tax.
Yeah.
Did you have any?
It was a tax.
Further thoughts on the San Diego special?
No, I don't think so.
Fine.
I think. I don't know. People are interested. People get really twisted up around taxes. That's true.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily doubt it, but I think there are certain things that don't get done even in the absence of a tax component that needs to be part of the conversation as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you guys wanted to put short-term vacation rentals in there. I didn't agree with that. But
you still reject short-term vacation rentals?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I think there is a broad consensus
but there isn't. You're wrong about that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I wanted to highlight one thing. So the mayor and the city council did.
Sorry, I was so dismissive just now. You might not be wrong. I don't know. But I don't think there is one.
So used to your dismissiveness, I didn't even note it.
Okay, good. Thanks.
So the mayor and the city council, at least a bare majority of the city council, did get what they wanted. They got that skydiving center to be turned into a navigation center for the homeless. I still can't picture what that is. Like a mall, you walk in and there's all these like desks you can go to and sign up for things or something.
Yeah, like something in Minority Report where like he goes in the mall and like because he's got the eye scan, everybody knows what he needs and they're like it's like that.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a good building for that. They've got all the nice modern graphics and the suits. Are they going to
keep the suits there?
I hope so. Give you one when you walk in.
It's like the Western Metal Building. Like, we kept that at Petco Park as like a bit of historical preservation. Like, we need to keep the skydiving tubes there as like a memory of where we've been.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, they literally left the building as is when they foreclosed on it. So when you go in there, you can see these like flight suits lined up. So maybe they'll hand them out to the homeless clients that walk in, like, get your flight suit on, go through some battery of tests and emerge like in the system.
Like, test your resilience to G-force.
I kid this, but this is still weird. They bought a building that won't house people, and they still know that they don't have places for these people to go, but they need this giant building to tell people where to go. Yeah. All right. So the mayor asked, this came up, and I got to shout out to the city hall 10th floor staffer who did this. I
have an idea who it might have been.
Do you?
Based on somebody who shared your write-up of it. You wrote this up in the morning report. Somebody shared that snippet on Facebook.
Oh, like they were proud.
A person who works in Chris Ward's office. I think there's a good chance that this was...
All right. Well, the mayor asked all the city council members to write up a list of places that might be good for affordable housing, permanent housing, right?
That's correct.
And so Councilman Chris Ward wrote back with a lot of options, a bunch of different places. The list included the skydiving facility in East Village that the mayor, of course, wants to turn into this navigation center for the homeless, not homes for them. In the memo, Ward dryly summarized current plans for the building like this. He said it's, quote, currently approved for a short-term contract to provide services already available at multiple locations in the immediately surrounding area, which that comes off on first glance as a very bureaucratic sort of description of it. But that is some good trash talk.
It's fantastic.
It's really good, in my opinion.
It's really good.
It just hits all these, like, just this.
No, yeah, there's like 5 elements to it. Short-term contract. It's like this isn't even a long-term solution. To provide services already provided. It's good. This is redundant.
Yeah. At
multiple locations, right? It's doubly redundant. In the immediate surrounding area, already right there.
Yeah.
It's
Your
great.
idea is
and then it's already in a document that is. It adds another layer of meaning in something that isn't in the sentence, which is we should be building homes.
Yeah,
here.
homes for people to live in.
We need homes.
And the mayor's office had this big response to that push.
To this? Who's like,
no, not to
it's
this.
just like,
this is good. But the mayor's point was like, well, look, this is only $1.5 million a year. That would build like 2 homes. What are you talking about? And that's not the thing with me. I'm not worried about the $1 million. I mean, I could fund a nonprofit news organization with that.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, your million's fine. Go for it. What bothers me is that building. You could turn that building into something. Somebody would buy that and build stuff. And maybe you need to give them, maybe you paid too much for it and you need to give them a little break on the price. I don't know. But it seems like a building that somebody could turn into literal housing that we need. Which
So for instance, to put this issue into focus, Lisa Halverstadt, we published a story earlier today that like these big tents that they set up, the 3 tents that were part of this like rush solution to get some people off the street, one of them has to close right in this area, 14th and Commercial. This is run by Father Joe's, and it has to close because they're trying to develop that into another area. So now there's 150 people that they don't know where they're going to put them. Part of it is because these people still don't have any homes to go into. Only half of the people who've been in these tents in the most recent period have received permanent housing. And so now they don't know where they're going to put these people. They also don't know where to relocate this tent, all underlining the simple recurring fact that all these temporary sheltering solutions are only supposed to be a bridge, and we don't have enough places to put them. So they end up being stuck in these supposed temporary solutions. But you can only call it a temporary solution so long before it becomes de facto permanent.
Exactly. And if there is a building that is a short-term contract for services that are immediately available in the surrounding area already, then maybe we should take that building.
It is such good shit. Currently, as if it needed to be explained the address is. Like if actually, I don't know. What would have been better? This, as dry as it is, or even more dry, just list the address. No description at all. Yeah. Just the address. Or, what is that? What's in it?
Perfect.
Is that
yeah. Or you could say like this wonderful building, modern.
Yeah.
Flight suits. Really great spot for housing. Just leave it at that. All right. Yeah. So
I actually take it back. this is over the top. This description isn't dry at all. It's slapstick. They put it on too much. The best response would have been just listing the address. No description about what's there.
Perfect place.
Just leave it for somebody who puts it into Google and finds a little Easter egg.
That's true. Overdid it. We're not excited about it anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, our hero of the week.
This goes to Superior Court Judge Ronald Frazier, who appears to be poised to end one of the longest running messes in San Diego public affairs. The city of Encinitas, I should say, does not have, it is the only local city that does not have a state-required plan to show how it's going to accommodate housing growth, but it's been caught in this catch-22 where everything that any zoning change needs to be approved by the voters, but voters will never approve any zoning change that would allow that to work. And so the city has just been left in the lurch there with an inability to adopt a state-required plan. The judge appears ready to kind of resolve that situation. And from the looks of it, it seems like both the people who've brought the lawsuits against the city and even the people who've been fighting for the local law that requires all of these things to go to public vote seem to have made their peace with this being set aside for now. There's going to be some questions about how exactly it's resolved that are not clear right now, but it does actually seem, famous last words, that a resolution is on the horizon.
Wow. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Avoid a San Diego special.
Yeah.
We'll see. Our goat of the week.
You lose. Good day, sir.
So the San Diego City Attorney's Office, Maura Elliott, announced on Thursday this week a major bust. Here's from the UT story about it. A massive Ivory trafficking ring has been broken up at a La Jolla art gallery. Criminal charges filed against the perpetrators. More than 300 pieces of elephant ivory and items containing ivory were confiscated from the Carlton Gallery on Prospect Street and nearby warehouse. The city attorney said that they were valued at more than $1.3 million. The state, I guess a couple of years ago, passed a ban on this sort of thing. Tony Atkins was pretty stoked about this crackdown. Who goes and buys ivory in La Jolla?
Get out of here.
So the goat goes to the Carlton Gallery on Prospect Street. Gross, man. Seriously.
Yeah, stop dealing in illegal ivory, monsters.
All right. After the break, stay tuned. We have a discussion, a People's Reporter discussion about the future and past of Balboa Park. Your questions answered. And then stay tuned for that discussion about the asylum and tension at the border with Maya Srikrishnan and all those folks seeking asylum in the United States. Also, go to voiceofsandiego.org/donate to hit our membership campaign for the year. We really appreciate it. It's been Voice of San Diego in partnership with News Radio 600 Coke.
The following is a sponsored message from Interfaith Community Services. Voice of San Diego is a nonprofit, and a majority of our budget comes from listeners and readers like you. But we also depend on revenue from grants and advertisers to maintain independence and produce more of the hard-hitting journalism you expect from us. Interfaith Community Services is North San Diego County's largest provider of social services. With programs ranging from food, housing, employment, youth services, addiction recovery, and more, Interfaith serves over 17,000 of their neighbors in need each year. Headquartered in Escondido, their mission is to help people help themselves. And to do that, they need your support. Visit www.interfaithservices.org to learn more.
Welcome to the People's Reporter, a Voice of San Diego feature where we gather questions from listeners like you, then answer those questions. I'm Lisa Halverstadt.
And I'm Adriana Heldes. This week, we rounded up questions from our readers about Balboa Park. So let's start off with one from Barb of North Park. She asks, why did Balboa Park Zoo remove its lower cost admission fee for city residents? And was the zoo always allowed to do that?
The zoo says that Southern California residents, not just San Diego residents, can get discounts. But the thing is, ticket and membership prices have gone up quite a bit. A zoo spokeswoman told me the zoos had many promotions for San Diego residents over the years, which makes it pretty tough to pinpoint what may have changed and when. But the thing is, everyone's paying more now, and the zoo is one of the priciest in the nation. Just to give a little context, in 1983, adults paid just $4.95 to get into the zoo.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty nice.
Yeah.
But now an adult day pass is $54, and memberships cost a lot more.
So, Lisa, why did Barb and others think that they could get more of a discount?
Well, the zoo leases from the city, and it also benefits from a city property tax we'll talk about a bit more later. But the zoo isn't required to provide discounts. Its city lease just says that the zoo has a right to, quote, charge reasonable fees, unquote. And the zoo says that its admission prices help support its mission.
Okay. So about the property tax that you mentioned, one reader actually asked us about it. Their question, what would it take to have a portion of those property taxes going to the zoo to go to Balboa Park as a whole?
There's some history with this one. Back in the 1930s, city voters decided that the zoo should get a share of city property taxes, and that tax is now pulling in about $13 million a year, and the zoo's doing pretty well financially. Balboa Park, on the other hand, as we've written about quite a bit, has a long list of costly needs. But city attorneys have said that they cannot force the zoo to share the wealth. There would need to be a public vote to change this.
All right, so here's another question. This one's from John Stump of City Heights. He asks, how much do the Balboa Park museums and other organizations renting space in Balboa Park make? And what rents do they actually pay?
Well, many of these institutions are getting a great deal. Most of the institutions that are using city-owned buildings in the park pay little or no rent. Nearly 24, and this includes the Museum of Art, the Model Railroad Museum, and the Automotive Museum, actually pay no rent.
Wow, that's a good deal.
Pretty nice in San Diego. And another 16 groups, which include the Zoo, the Air and Space Museum, and the Boy Scouts, get a pretty big discount.
All right, Lisa. So what's the catch? Why are they getting such a good deal, and how can I get in on it?
Well, bad news for you. There's some history with this one. So Balboa Park buildings were built for expositions in 1915 and 1935. And after those ended, the city decided to fill them with nonprofits that would provide cultural, educational, and recreational experiences.
Ooh, fancy.
The nonprofits just had to cover utilities and maintenance. But city leaders and Balboa Park boosters say that these rent subsidies make sense because the institutions do help draw in tourists, and many of these groups have made pretty big investments to maintain these really old buildings.
Yeah, well, it is a big tourist attraction, so that makes sense. Okay, so we've answered Barb and John's questions. You can check out the full rundown of Balboa Park leases and revenue information and get answers to a couple more questions on our website.
Now it's your turn. What do you want to know about San Diego? Send us your questions. We'll choose the best ones and ask readers to vote for their favorites. Then Voice of San Diego will investigate and share what we learn. Go to voiceofsandiego.org/People's Reporter or text us at 619-202-9051. Your question could be featured in an upcoming episode.
Maya Srikrishnan has been doing a great job covering the border and immigration policy, and her, along with Adriana Heldiz, have been in Mexico on and off and at the border trying to understand what's going on. It is, I think, a historic crisis, so I wanted her to come in and talk about it and help us understand what's going on. Maya, set the scene for us, what's going on in Tijuana right now and what you saw when you were there Sunday, and just what is causing it all, too.
So right now, the situation in Tijuana is that this exodus of migrants from Central America, mainly from Honduras, they have all arrived in Tijuana, and there are thousands of them, many of whom are hoping to request asylum in the United States. But there were already close to 1,000 people who were waiting when they all got there. And Customs and Border Protection says that they can only process a maximum of about 100 people per day. And very often we hear that they process fewer people, like 20 or 30. So
if you do the math, we're talking months and months.
Yeah. So there's a huge backlog. And so now the migrants, the city of Tijuana, and everyone is kind of trying to figure out, well, what's going to happen? What do we do while we're waiting?
You used the word exodus. Is that a word that they have been employing to describe themselves?
Yes. It's been pretty interesting. In past years, it was called a caravan, and it has been this group that recently has made the journey called themselves the caravan, and a lot of people have been referring to them as caravan.
It's similar word in Spanish, caravana, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But they have also started calling themselves an exodus, which, given the huge number of people in this particular group, seems fitting.
Well, it also has obviously biblical implications. They're fleeing is what they're trying to describe. So give us a sense of where they're all staying right now. It's a stadium?
It's more of a sports complex in Tijuana. And so there are just lots of tents essentially set up there, crammed in there. And the sports facility has the capacity for, I guess, around 1,000 people. And
I thought I saw it was about 3,000, right? And then there's like 6,000 there or something like that. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but it's like at double the capacity at this point.
But we're talking about like a mall type of a feel, buildings, walkways kind of thing.
I mean, there are some sidewalks, but it's a lot of just
tents.
It's a lot of tents set up on like a field.
And it's right next to the border.
It's pretty close. It's about a 20-minute. I mean, you can see the border wall in the background, so it's pretty close to the border itself. But the nearest actual crossing, the San Ysidro, the Tijuana side of the San Ysidro Ped West port of entry, which is called El Chaparral, it's about a 20-minute walk.
All right, I want to talk first about the specifics of what we know about what happened Sunday, but then I want to get into like the larger forces at play, what led to it. So let's talk first about that. You were there Sunday and you saw the formation of this march that was started. And the march was explicitly just they wanted to pressure the U.S. side at least to start to allow more people to come in and do it faster, right?
Yes.
And then did you think, or was it clear that they were going to actually try to approach or breach the border?
I mean, from the people who I spoke with when they began the march, that wasn't really clear at all that anyone had that intention. But obviously there were hundreds of people there, so I don't know what every single one of them was thinking. Mm-hmm. The march went as most marches do for the most part, and then there is a bridge over the Tijuana River leading to the port of entry. And at the foot of that bridge, before they could cross it, there was a blockade of Mexican federal police. And, there was a standstill there for a while, and it was kind of unclear whether people were going to do sort of like a sit-in or turn back. And then after, I want to say maybe like 15 minutes or more of kind of that situation, that waiting, suddenly some people just went around them into the canal and headed towards the port of entry.
So you were already on the bridge at that point.
Yes.
And so it's like they were prepared for people to approach the normal entry for the pedestrian crossing, and they were all lined up ready to stop them there. And what these guys decided to do is go around that, and that's what caused some of the chaos, right? Yeah,
it was actually kind of crazy. So we were on the bridge, and there were a lot of federal police who were lined up along the bridge.
Had you already gotten past before the police lined up, or?
No, the blockade. So it's kind of interesting. The federal police, they do these blockades, and I think it's happened with some of the other protests. But for media, they'll let them through. Like they're not, they're pretty discerning about that. So we had gotten up on the bridge, and all of these federal police were lined up like a few yards away from the blockade. It seemed just in case they had gone through. And then all of a sudden we were kind of standing there, and the federal police just started running essentially when they realized what was happening towards the port of entry to try and stop that.
Yeah, so I recommend go to the border report we wrote this week. Maya wrote this week along with Adriana Heldis, and Adriana actually has video of that moment when it sort of seemed like things unleashed and they ran across and started to fill in that kind of parking lot behind the pedestrian crossing. And it was at that moment that the border basically was closed, right? And so then it's as they pressured, clearly some of them were trying to get through the border. What they were trying to do at that point is unclear, but it started to get violent. That's when we saw the tear gas and all that sort of thing happen. So I think you described to me really well the forces at play here. One is obviously they have come up here, and because of the history of asylum, there is an interpretation of asylum that we've been working on, that they can show up and they can present themselves, and they are all waiting to do that. And so that has happened. There's thousands of people waiting to do that. In the meantime, there's a president who clearly wants to get either rid of that completely or severely limit the definition of asylum, and has started the process of what they're calling metering, which is this 100 a day, right?
It's unclear whether the metering is specifically the 100 a day. Metering started actually, it seems like a couple of years ago. There's a lawsuit that's currently making its way through the courts that was filed based on this slow processing back in 2016. So it's been a issue for a while, but it has definitely gotten worse under this administration. So there's this, as you put it, there's this tension between these people who are very desperate to leave their countries, who are choosing to come to the U.S. for specific reasons. I mean, there are some who have decided to stay in Mexico, and even in the past, the caravan earlier this year, there were many people who decided to stay in Mexico, but there are some people who make the decision that for whatever reason, they only feel safe in the U.S., or the U.S. is specifically where they want to go, or they might have family in the U.S. There's a whole multitude of reasons. And so they all come to Tijuana. And there's this pressure now because they have to wait there. And when we're talking about thousands of people, that means that the city has to, they have this influx of thousands of really vulnerable, really needy people who are going to be waiting there for months, and they don't know. And then now the city has to, and its residents have to kind of figure out what to do with them, how to care for them. So all these kinds of things have been building over time. They've been things that we've seen on smaller levels, and they're kind of culminating. And so I think what we saw Sunday was all of these things coming together, the increased militarization of the border and the increased desperation of these people as they're also realizing, well, we might not be able to get through. We came all this way. We're depending on this, or we're like really, really hoping for this. And they might not let us through, and we don't think that staying here is an option. Yeah,
so there's deliberate decisions being made that they know are going to frustrate this large group of people, and that group of people is pressuring, getting more frustrated and pressuring things at the border, and that pressure and that violence is being used to justify further restrictions on letting them in. It's a spiral that's kind of gotten out of control. And then you add to it that Tijuana and Tijuanenses who are there are a little worried about how things are going themselves, and I've started to put pressure on this, and then that's exploded in its own tension, in its own xenophobia in a way, in its own discomfort for the mayor of Tijuana, the residents of Tijuana, and people around there, right?
Yeah, and I mean, as you described it, it almost seems like this has turned into something that has played into exactly what this administration has tried to paint migrants as, because now they can point to this and say, well, look, a bunch of them rushed the border, and they can say that without the context of all of the tension that they have been putting on, at this bottleneck that helped lead to the explosion, so it's...
Right. There was a crazy story about a woman who the BBC ended up talking to her in more depth, but she had She's got a lot of problems. Her son needs surgery, I think, some kind of medical problems. And she came from Honduras, and she started to get really frustrated with the food. There was somebody pressuring her son to eat food or whatever. And there was a viral video that came out of her complaining about the food in Mexico. And that turned into this huge, from what I understand, huge cultural thing in Mexico, where people are saying, like, how dare they come and, insult our food? We're trying to help them or whatever. And they interviewed her later, and she's like, I'm so sorry. It's just been really hard and everything. And the whole situation just broke my heart, just reading about, like, obviously she, had this moment, lashed out, that in the old times wouldn't have gotten captured on camera, wouldn't have gotten to be a big thing in the country. But it was, and it is, and it's like one of these things that catch. And you were describing something really interesting. Like, that's then the whole story of this caravan. That, like, 10 years ago, it may have developed in a much different way, and we wouldn't have seen it. It wouldn't have gotten as big because of the internet. It wouldn't have been as noticed because of the internet, and it wouldn't have generated near the kinds of feelings that it does. But the internet helped it and has really hurt it, right?
Yeah, it's really kind of crazy to watch. If we think about even how the caravan or this exodus got so big, it was all organized through Facebook and WhatsApp. And I mean, I even came across flyers on my Facebook for some of the, so this exodus was made up of one really large group and then a lot of ones that have followed it. And I've seen flyers on my Facebook and gotten WhatsApp messages about it. But that's part of the reason why it swelled so much. And then in the same vein, the reason why people on whatever side of the immigration debate can get so worked up about it is because they're constantly bombarded with these crazy images. And the thing is that this stuff was probably all happening before, the treatment conditions and, well, I don't know if there's ever been a shelter the way that there is right now in Tijuana. But, the thing is that a lot of these moments, even on Sunday, there were people who were broadcasting live as all of that played out. And it allows people to have this gut reaction to things immediately. Because they're just seeing these images. They're seeing them sometimes in isolation without context, because they're seeing them immediately and they're just seeing them in the moment, and it allows things to go crazy. I mean, every random person I've talked to in Tijuana in the past couple of weeks has brought up that video about the rice and beans, and it's kind of crazy because it's this one thing that this woman said when she felt like her son was being bullied in a shelter. But it was this one line, and without the context, it spread all over the city and helped stoke kind of these underlying existing feelings.
Yeah, a resentment.
Yeah.
So there was an update today I found fascinating. No criminal charges will be filed against any of the 42 people associated with the caravan of Central American migrants who were arrested in that clash on Sunday. The decision not to prosecute was interesting. There was apparently 27 men, and the rest were women and children. For some of them, according to this report, they didn't want to file it because they were sick, and the others, they didn't want to file prosecutions because they were women and children who would have been separated if they were prosecuted. So it's like all the stories in one thing, right? Like the separation policy that they've had to back off on a little bit, but also just some fascinating developments. So you were just there today again. The blockade was there again, but the melee didn't break out in a similar way yet.
I mean, we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it yet, but I think it's, as far as I know, it's something that's ongoing. But it seemed like it was a smaller group. A bunch of migrants from the caravan announced earlier today that they were going to go on a hunger strike. They're hoping that Mexico will process their humanitarian visas quicker while they get to stay, or while they're staying in Mexico waiting. They're trying to pressure the U.S. to speed up its own processing of asylum, and so they're trying to put pressure on various people through that.
Now, one last thing that I found fascinating is they have this thing only 100 a day, but the U.S. has a totally hands-off policy about how those 100 are sort of chosen, right? Like and so there's this like makeshift system of somebody's notebook that kind of decides like which 100 get to go forward or not. That cannot be sustainable.
I mean, it's been in place for a while.
Wow.
I think that my understanding of it is that the people who are in charge of the notebook are people who are selected by everyone who's waiting. So there's some sort of democracy that has emerged from all the chaos for them to form their own system and for them to figure out a way to make it more fair. Although I've also heard that since the book is often run by Central Americans, like sometimes like immigrants from Africa or other places are sometimes left in the lurch. But yeah, it's kind of crazy how those things happen, how people can organize themselves.
Yeah. Maya Srikrishnan has been doing some great reporting at the border, and there's a lot more to come. Thank you.